Hello, everyone. My name is Sequoia. I'm the Director of Education and Community Engagement at New York Theater Workshop. Thank you for being with us on this Monday, rainy Monday if you're in New York evening. And thank you for bearing with us with the technical difficulties. Every year it's always something with Zoom. So thank you for your patience. Thank you for letting us know where you're zooming in from in the chat. It's really awesome to see so many people from all over the country. At first glance, we're seeing people from Atlanta, Philly, Orlando, New Hampshire, Yonkers, um, the Bay Area, New Brunswick, New Jersey, Queens. Super exciting to see you all here. Today is going to be basically an opportunity for you to learn more about the 2050 Administrative Fellowship at New York Theater Workshop. Not to be confused with the Artistic Fellowship, which is currently on pause. This is the Administrative Fellowship. You will hear from me, the Director of Education, a few of our staff members, and also an alum and current fellows. So we're going to jump right in by introducing our wonderful group of current fellows, former fellows who actually will jump in later, and our part-time staff members. So first up, again, my name is Sequoia, she, her pronouns, and I'm the Director of Education and Community Engagement, and I'm going to pass it to Martika Williams.
Hi, everyone. I'm Martika Williams. I use she, her pronouns, and I am a teaching artist and part time administrative staff here at the workshop. And I will pass it to Julie.
Thanks, Martika. I'm Julie. Hi, everyone. I use they, them pronouns, and I'm the current Education and Engagement Fellow at the workshop. I'll pass to Kim.
Hi, everyone. Oh, it froze. Hi, everyone. My name is Kim. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the current Artistic Workshops Fellow here at the workshop. And I'll pass it to Marty.
Hi everyone, my name is Marty. I use they, them pronouns, and I am the former Education Engagement Fellow. I was the 2024-2025 Fellow, and now I work full-time at the workshop as the Education Engagement Associate. And with that, Sequoia, do you want me to dive right in or go ahead?
Yeah, no, fantastic. I was just going to say Jerome Allen Smith, our former marketing fellow, current community engagement coordinator in National Queer Theater. They will be jumping on a little bit later. And I'll pass it back to Marty for our land acknowledgement.
Awesome. So before we begin, I just wanted to invite you all to listen to our land acknowledgement. This is something that we share in honor of the different communities that have been part of New York Theater Workshop's space before us. So our theater lives on the island of Manhattan. Manhattan has always been a gathering and trading place for many indigenous peoples, where nations intersected from all four directions since time immemorial. It was a place to gather and sometimes to seek refuge during times of conflict and struggle. The staff and trustees of New York Theater Workshop pay respect to all of their ancestors, past, present, and future generations. We acknowledge that our theater and our work is situated on the island of Manhattan, Manohanet, on the island, traditional lands of the Munsee Lenape, the Canarsie, Unkachag, Metenakok, Shinnecock, Regawonk, and the Haudenosaunee Confederacy. We respect that many Indigenous peoples continue to live and work on this island and acknowledge their ongoing contribution to this area. We encourage each of you to learn more about the inhabited land on which you are now standing. We'd like to thank Safe Harbors NYC for contributing to this statement, and I'll also put in the chat nativeland.ca, which is a great resource for you all to continue learning and growing in that work. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Marty. All right, friends, this will be recorded. So if you have to, jet out or, you want to just come back to this information, it will live on our website at nytw.org on the 2050 Admin Fellowship page and also on our YouTube account. All right, so let's jump into our next slide. So, the overview and goals of the 2050 Administrative Fellowship. So, it is predicted by the year 2050 that there will be no single race. And obviously, at the workshop, we want to take that into account and we want to reflect. We don't want to just wait for 2050. We want to start beginning reflecting diversity in the current day right now, which was the inspiration behind the 2050 Administrative Fellowship and the Artistic Fellowship. Next. Therefore, we are seeking enthusiastic candidates like yourselves to join us in theater administration. We're looking for people who have unique perspectives, inclusive of race, color, religion, familial status, gender identity, sexual orientation, national origin, age, physical abilities to apply, and knowing that we are an equal opportunity employer. So a lot of times people often ask, when it comes to 2050 administrative fellowship, I'll be honest, some people are like, "Oh, can I not apply because I'm a white male?" That is not necessarily the case. But however, the question is, what diversity do you bring to this field? Like, what is it that makes you seem underrepresented in the space of theater administration? So ask yourselves that and apply anyway. You never know. Next. So the overview is that it is a year-long paid part-time fellowship. And when we say year, we actually mean the season. So think of it from September to June. So typically, the fellowship, this current cohort, they're with us from September to August. Next year, it will be September to June. And we're stating this now in this info session because a lot of times, the fellowship has been going on for many years. And we just want, to be transparent as possible. It will now be season long. So it is September to June. And you're working directly with the department. So think of it as you are applying to work either in marketing, development, artistic workshop, education and engagement. We'll learn more about what those are later on during our time together. And you're integrated into your department. You will attend a 2-day intensive orientation where you're learning the ins and outs of NYTW, but also learning the ins and outs of what it means to be a fellow at the workshop. And you'll take on day-to-day tasks. You will attend required monthly seminar meetings, which are typically on Thursdays. And those seminars are typically professional development in something as basic as writing cover letters and resume building, or something like learning how to do taxes as an administrator juggling multiple 1099s. So the mo monthly seminars are typically an opportunity in professional development and just learning. And then participating in brown bag lunches, which are industry and networking lunches, whether it's with networking and industry officials outside of the workshop, and also having lunches with staff members within the workshop who might not work in your department. Next. So we are looking for fellows in artistic workshop, development, education and engagement, and marketing. Artistic workshop, think of it as working, and Kim Marie, who is our current fellow, current artistic workshop fellow, can speak more about this, but think of it as you're working on the workshops and reading side of things. We used to have a literary fellowship that has transitioned into the artistic workshop fellowship, and I just want to be as transparent as possible that this is more so focused on the artistic reading and workshops. Yeah, I'm sure there's like reading scripts and there's literary components, but it's not fully a literary fellowship this time around. The development fellowship, you're working in our department. And again, that is not artistic development. That is development when it comes to fundraising. So think of it as like institutional giving, individual giving, donor research, special events, fundraising. Anything that has to do with like fundraising as a nonprofit, that will be within our development department. Education and engagement, that's working with our in-school programs. Like our in-school, we partner with 6 different partner schools. Our after-school programs, such as Mind the Gap and Youth Artistic Instigators. Julie on this call can also speak on that as well. And our community engagement, where we're doing events surrounding our shows. We have a For the Culture series where we plan affinity nights and other community events, talkbacks surrounding the shows. But outside of just the community events and show events, we also have robust community engagement programs as well. And then marketing, this is going to be more so centered on graphic design. So people who are interested in what it means to, market a show in the means of like, designing posters, designing key art, designing social media. So those are our four departments at a glance of what you will be applying for. Next. So today is the virtual info session, March 16th. The deadline is March 27th at 11:59 p.m. Please write it down because the portal just automatically closes. Every year I get an email, oh, I forgot I was in the wrong time zone. Like, I am sorry, but it automatically closes. So please do your very best to get your application in on time. We will review applications, and when I say we, I mean the department supervisors. So it's not necessarily me or anyone on this call reviewing those applications, except the supervisors. And it's going to take them around a month or so. So around the entire month of April, they will be reviewing applications. And then interviews start to begin around May. Interviews can sometimes be rolling because you'll see in the application you're able to apply for two positions, and we encourage you to apply for two because, sometimes people may think that they want to do development, but then once they start to, get into the rhythm of it, they're like, actually, I don't want to do development. Or they're like, I really want to do development. They don't get development, but they get education and engagement. So it's just an opportunity to have another chance of just learning the ins and outs of a nonprofit. Um, and offers will come in late May. We try to have the offers out before the Memorial Day weekend, but that can always be a guarantee. So I say all of this, I'm putting this timeline up here, but don't hold us to it because, you know, you have your supervisors, they're working on top of trying to review hundreds of applications because each department gets over 100 something applications. So I'm putting this timeline out there, but letting you know that it's gonna take some flexibility on your impatience on your end with us. And then the first day would be September 14th, and with a 2-day orientation, so that's the 14th and the 15th, and then concludes June 25th of 2027. So, what is the application form? So, it is an online application form. You cannot start and stop it. So, it's important to know that going in that you can't pause the application and come back. It's an Airtable. It requires a personal statement, a resume that lists any kind of theater administration experience or relevant experience. You might be thinking, I don't have any theater admin experience, and that's okay. That's what this fellowship is for. But maybe you have retail experience, or maybe you have experience, in the student government at your university. Whatever experience you have, list it. I do not, nor do any of us on staff want to see your performance resume. That does not help us. This is not a performance fellowship, so please only share with us your relevant work experience. And two professional references. We do not need recommendation letters. We just need the two professional references, meaning their name, how you know them, so your name, their title, and some kind of contact information, usually a phone number and an email for them. Next. All right, again, your professional references should come from someone who knows you well on a professional level. Ideally, you are not having your mother, your friend, your cousin be your reference. You're having someone who knows you in a professional setting. That can be a professor at a university. That can be a former teacher. That can be someone who oversees your volunteering. You volunteer at some site and they are the supervisor at the place you volunteer at. We just want to avoid, and not just for this fellowship, just in your work life to come, avoid having any kind of friends or family serve as references. Your references should be people who know you outside of a personal way. Next. All right. The personal statement, it comes up a lot. These are questions that are here to just guide you. You do not have to answer these questions verbatim. It's just an opportunity to help guide your personal statement. But I want your personal statement I want you to think of your personal statement as an opportunity to tell us NYTW, why you? We get hundreds of applications. So why do you want to be the next education and engagement fellow or artistic workshop fellow? And use these questions as a guide. How do your experiences and values align with the goals of the 2050 Fellowship to diversify the field of theater administration? Like, how does that align? What about New York Theater Workshop specifically appeals to you? There are many different fellowships in New York City alone and many different fellowships in this country. Why are you choosing to apply for New York Theater Workshop? What is it about the shows that we do? What is it about our artistic workshop? What is it about our education and engagement? Write specifically about what appeals to you when it comes to the work that we do. And you might be thinking, I've never seen a show at the workshop, or I don't know much about the workshop. That's okay. That's what the internet is for. Get on our website, get on YouTube, do your research, and figure out if you even want to work here. Because a lot of times we can get in the habit, and I say we because I was in your shoes once upon a time too. We just want a fellowship, we just want something, but we miss out on doing our research, and it could save us on time wasted when maybe that place wasn't the ideal place for us anyway. So it's really important that you go ahead and do your research and know exactly what you're applying for. And then think about the specific skills that you could bring to your department. Everyone automatically sometimes go, well, I don't have the skills yet. I'm fresh out of college, or I'm making a career change, so I don't necessarily know how to be a line producer. That is okay. But maybe you are a barista at Starbucks, and so you have really great interpersonal skills, or you have amazing patience. Like, I don't know. Like, you can speak to the things that you already know how to do and then transfer it into whatever artistic medium that you want to do. It's your job to essentially tell us why you. And that's not to, I don't say that in a way to be like, you got to tell us why you want to do this, but it's in a way to encourage you to challenge yourself and say, hey, I'm the right person for this job, because we only have the personal statement. The personal statement really is your first impression. And then there's a follow-up interview. So you really only have that personal statement to like grab your supervisor. So personal statements are really important. 750 words max. We don't need 2, 3 pages, you know. Tell us your story. And if you answer these questions, not necessarily verbatim, but if you like use these questions as a guide, you'll come up with a great personal statement, hopefully. Next. And then interviews. So here's the thing with interviews. Like I said, they're typically on a rolling basis in the sense of maybe someone applied for their first choice was development and their second choice was artistic. Our goal, obviously, is to have you do one interview, and if artistic and development both want to interview you, it will be one interview. But sometimes that doesn't always happen. So maybe you'll do your interview with Devo, but artistic is like, actually, we want to interview them too. And so you might do a second interview with artistic. I also want to note that with our artistic workshop, fellowship is the most competitive. It's the one that gets the most applications. It's also the one that has the most steps. So you would do your initial interview like all of the other departments, but sometimes, not sometimes, there's typically a script coverage assignment where you are given a script to read and then you must turn in a report based on that script. And I'm sure Kim could talk about that more because she actually went through that process. But the interviews are in 45-minute increments and they are over Zoom. So you don't necessarily have to be in New York to do the interviews. And typically in the interview is myself. I'm in all of the interviews and whoever the supervisor is for that department and maybe one other representative from that department. So for example, if you were interviewing for education and engagement, it would be myself as a department supervisor, Marty as our associate, and maybe someone else, but typically it would just be the two of us. In Devo, same thing. It would be Ali, who's the supervisor, director of development, and someone else who's full-time on her team. So typically expect 2, maybe 3 people from New York Theater Workshop side, but at the minimum 2 people. Next. Pay. Fellows are paid $20 an hour and they work 27 to 30 hours a week. I do think it's important to note that fellows lean closer to the 30 hours a week mark. And also, it's really important to distinguish that it's not necessarily like, oh, I can do 20 hours this week and then 14 this week and then 12 the next week, then go back to 20. No, the schedule that you make at the top of the orientation is a schedule that you essentially hopefully will have throughout your time with us. So, for example, Julie, I know Julie is working with us Monday through Friday essentially. But sometimes those hours can change to maintain the 30 hours. That's really important to know. It's not necessarily like a you play as you go type of thing. You set your hours, and those are your hours. Of course, there are moments when you're like, actually, I want to go home for a weekend, so I'm going to take Friday off. You can rearrange your hours, and maybe you typically work 10 a.m. to 6 p.m., but you might work a 10 to 2 type of thing. You just rearrange your hours. Still do your 30, but you can rearrange. Um, it's also important to know that as part-time employees, fellows are not necessarily paid for all of the office closures. So, for example, if the office is closed for the Christmas holiday, fellows will be paid for Christmas Eve, which actually no, they're paid for Christmas, which is the actual holiday, but they wouldn't be paid for those other days the office is closed. So technically, our office is closed like Christmas Day all the way up into New Year's. The fellows wouldn't be paid for that block that doesn't include Christmas Day and New Year's Day. They're only paid for federal holidays, and that's really important for you to know. And that's across the board for all part-time employees at New York Theater Workshop. It's just really important that you know this going in, so it's not a surprise that just because the office is closed, that doesn't mean that it's a federal holiday. Now, 4th of July, Memorial Day, those like federal holidays, fellows will be compensated for that as part-time employees. But just because the office is closed, that doesn't mean that a fellow is paid for that office closure. And if and when you get the fellowship, we can talk more. All right, next. All right, I've done enough talking. Hallelujah. We're gonna open it up to our current and former fellows, Julie, Marty, and Kim Marie. And Martika is gonna join this conversation as well. For those of you who have questions, we have an email, adminfellowship@nytw.org. Martika will be answering any and all questions that you email to that email. I'm also available at sequoiag at nytw.org. So let's jump in. If you can put your questions in the Q&A, that'll help us because this chat is crazy. Okay, so the first question is, could you speak a bit more to what the day-to-day life is like from your from different fellowships? And thank you so much for your time. And that is from Max. So how about a current fellow takes that?
Yeah, I can jump in. I can at least mostly speak to education and engagement, but also Kim, if you want to jump in at any point for your department too. I think what is fun about the schedule is sort of for most fellows, and especially in my department, you have a couple of like events or sort of activities or classes that you're going to be going to throughout the week, and then you have your general workflow. So that's not necessarily like activities for you, but what I mean by that is that in my day-to-day week, on Tuesdays, we have our Youth Artistic Instigators class, and on Wednesdays, we have our Mind the Gap class. And then on Thursdays, we often have like engagement events and different things. So a lot of the way my workflow works is that I have my general like administrative tasks that I'm doing at my computer on a given day. And then at some point in the day, like Marty and I will go over to our classroom and then be teaching a group of students or getting to like work an event and things like that. And so it has a nice balance of like solo work with forward facing work, which I think most of the departments have a similar-ish type of structure, but Kim, you can talk to the artistic one as well.
Yeah, I would say like my hours are pretty standard, like office hours. I work 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. on weekdays, 4 days a week. not 5 days a week because yeah, we have to stay within that 30-hour cap that Sequoia was talking about. So yeah, I'm pretty much getting all my work done within that 10 to 6 schedule. But that being said, in the artistic department, there are certain days within that week that are definitely busier than others. Like the best example I can give of that is that we do something called Mondays at 3, which you can read more about on the New York Theater Workshop website. But that's like a bi-weekly, like every other week reading series that we do where we do a staged reading of a new piece. And so I know if it's a Monday where we're doing a Mondays at 3, my Monday is going to be crazy. Like I'm running around this building, I'm setting up chairs, I'm printing scripts, and it's very exciting and hands-on and fast-paced. Just to say, like, yes, my work is still being done within 10 a.m. to 6 p.m., but it's a lot busier than maybe a Friday where I'm just doing some office tasks on my desktop.
Fantastic. Do fellows ever work weekends or is it mainly standard business hours? Uh, Typically it's Monday through Fridays, but occasionally special events will come up that happens to be on a weekend. So, for example, in education and community engagement, as Julie mentioned, we have a youth ensemble, the Youth Artistic Instigators. Sometimes on the weekends, not sometimes, on the weekends they take their headshot sessions. That's just one Saturday out of the season, but occasionally there might be some other things that pop up. But typically the standard schedule is Monday through Friday. What makes an artistic workshop fellow the best, most considered? I wouldn't say it's the best, but I would say that it's the most competitive because this is a theater and we're all here in a way because we value artist we have like some kind of like artistic lens, artistic sense. And with this just being a theater and people want to be close to the stage and that it just makes the most sense that it's the thing that's the most competitive. Um, it's really important that you choose a second choice. If artistic workshop is your first choice, you should choose a second choice. Sometimes people like to do artistic workshop first and artistic workshop second. You can, the application portal isn't gonna block you from doing that, but I do think you're selling yourself short because again, you're coming in as a fellow. Just because you're doing artistic workshop doesn't mean you have to limit yourself to only that. You have access to learn about Devo. So if you come in as a Devo fellow, or to Julie's point, as an education and engagement fellow, Julie has access to artistic people. Julie can have lunch with the associate artistic director, with the artistic director. And Julie, I would love for you to speak about having the opportunities to, because Julie is a director outside of working in education and engagement. So, Julie, if you could just speak about having the opportunity to talk with other departments and still cultivate that artistic lens that you have.
Yeah, absolutely. I think something that Sequoia said to all of our fellowship cohort members at the beginning was sort of like this type of fellowship is a you get out of it what you put into it kind of situation. So I've been able to like attend a lot of the readings on Mondays at 3 to kind of go to any of the artistic events that are happening that don't live in my department. Always with the caveat that like as long as I can get my workflow done, I can have the opportunity to do stuff with other departments or visit meetings that I'm interested in, which has been really exciting. Just the level of openness everyone has. I would say, like, I see this through all the fellows' work and also just in general with the different department leaders. They really want to talk about your work and talk about what they do and like bring you into it. So you could sit in on a Devo meeting or you could participate in like reading scripts for the season submissions and stuff like that. And generally, what I've found is everyone's really open to that happening.
There's another question in the chat that's come up a couple of times. And Julie or Kim or Marty, if you want to jump in on this, but have you been able to balance or have you wanted to balance having a part-time job outside of the fellowship?
Yeah, I can speak to this one too and then pass it off to someone else. But as Sequoia said, I work as a director and I also have a teaching artist practice in my own world. And so I found that those two jobs can be easier to like add on top of my fellowship work because often as a director or as a young director, I'm working at night. And as a teaching artist, you have really flexible, like 2 hour chunks where you might be teaching a class, which has been, in my experience, easier to like adjust my hours to make those types of gigs happen. It's harder, I think, to have like a job that has a similar, very rigid schedule at the same time as the workshop schedule. But if you can be flexible, I think that there is room for that. But yeah, I don't know what everyone else thinks.
Yeah, I can also speak on this. Kind of similar to Julie, I am like a freelance director and producer in my free time. So I've been able to balance that with my normal admin fellowship schedule because typically rehearsals for the things I'm freelancing on happen in the evenings. So post 6 p.m. when I finish my workday at New York Theater Workshop. In addition to that, I've been able to like pick up a few shifts every few months with like a brand ambassador event catering company that I work for, where it's like signing up for a shift when I'm available on a weekend to like host an event or something. But that's the kind of way I've been like supplementing my income. I do know that some past fellows have managed to like have like a coffee shop job on the weekends or something. Me personally, I like having a little more flexibility though. So this is what it's worked for me.
Um, is it one application for all four sectors, artistic workshop development, education, and marketing, or are there additional steps only after during the interview? So the first step is the application, and on the application, you choose a first choice and a second choice. But you write your personal statement tailored to both. So your personal statement can mostly be about your love for artistic workshop and blah, 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 blah. And then you also talk about second choice is development because of X, Y, and Z. So you do want to address both in your personal statement, both departments you're applying for, and then your interview, you could apply for artistic and development, but only be interviewed for development. So it's really important, like as you're considering the two that you're applying for, know that you could be interviewed for one and not the other. I hope that answers your question. Is there a preference for a person to already reside in New York City when applying? I'm moving to the city by the first week of August. No, there's no preference at all. Actually, our current marketing fellow moved here from Texas. Um, yeah, just know that the workshop does not provide housing. So that's just really important to know. And we don't necessarily have like the resources to help you move. There's no like moving fee or location reimbursement or anything like that. Who's eligible to work in the US through O1 visa? Would I be eligible to apply for the administrative fellowship even if I am not a US citizen? This question comes up a lot and is on our frequently asked questions. Yes, but we don't sponsor visas. So that's important to know. You would have to get your sponsorship through someone else. And if that doesn't answer your question, if you email adminfellowship@nytw.org, we can figure out like how that applies to your specific case. As you mentioned that the artistic fellowship is the most competitive, are there any experiences or qualifications that set a candidate apart? I'd be interested in Kim to, tell us about like what you were doing before you applied. But from the, staff perspective, I would say every single artistic fellow we've had has been significantly different. There hasn't been one thing, and I'm not just saying that, they all have been different. My first year at the workshop, the artistic fellow was 36 years old. The second year, the artistic fellow was more like coming from like a background as an actor as opposed to like the other ones were like dramaturgy, playwrights. So everyone has been very different. I think um, the best advice I can give, and I know it sounds cheesy and cliche, is truly to be yourself and like just tell us why you like what you bring to it. But yeah, I want to hear from Kim and give us a idea on what you were doing before you came.
Yeah, absolutely. So I graduated from undergrad a couple of years ago, and in the time between that and New York Theater Workshop, I spent a year doing an artistic residency in Italy at the Accademia dell'Arte. And that was very like hands-on making theater, devised theater, physical theater. And then after that, what I did last year was I was a directing dramaturgy apprentice at Portland Stage Company in Portland, Maine. And that was a lot more similar to what I'm doing now. So I feel like I gained a lot of administrative skills doing that apprenticeship. I was doing script coverage, which was like reading scripts for them, and writing reports on scripts. I was seeing shows. I was being the assistant director on a bunch of their regional theater shows that they do. And I think those administrative skills is what set me up well to apply for the Artistic Workshop Fellowship. But all that being said, you don't need to have had done necessarily like a program like that to be a good candidate for the Artistic Workshop Fellowship. As Sequoia was saying earlier, I think if you have similar interests or similar admin experience in even just like a medical office or something. Like those are valuable skills that you can put on your application for this position. And I would just say, like, if you're really serious and interested in applying for the Artistic Workshops Fellowship, like just having a really strong idea of the kind of work, new work in theater that you're excited about. So if you apply and you get an interview, going into that interview knowing the names of some playwrights and some directors that you're really excited about because basically at the end of the day working in this department is working in new work development, so they want to see that you are excited about new work. And that was like a lot of what we talked about in my interview. They were like, who are you interested in? What are some of your favorite plays? Why are they your favorite plays? So being able to talk about that. You can also go on the New York Theater Workshop website and see what have we done in recent seasons? What have we done in recent Mondays at 3 programming and see the kind of the names of the artists that we work with. So that would be my advice.
If I were you, I would take Kim's advice and do everything she just said. I do want to take the time to acknowledge Jerome Allen Smith, who just joined us. Jerome was a former marketing fellow from 22-23, currently the community engagement coordinator at National Queer Theater. But yeah, Jerome, if you could just tell us a little bit about yourself, your time in the fellowship, and how you got to where you are today in your career.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Hey, everyone. Jerome Allen Smith. My pronouns are he, him, his. I applied to the workshop back in 2022 at the end of my acting grad program, and I just was basically just trying to figure out like what was my next step. Like I wanted to be in the industry. I also wanted to figure out like, my own acting career. And luckily, prior to the workshop and during grad school, I started a podcast and then I talked about those skills that I used to make said podcast. And then that became that was the like beginning of my time at the workshop, basically of like I have these skills. How do I activate them in this like professional sphere? And I think without getting into further about that, I guess there's two questions. I'll talk about my experiences. After my time at the workshop, I started working for this producing group called Media Art Exploration. We do science and performance, so we bring scientists together with artists and create new works. And I became the director of marketing there. And then, as Sequoia said, I'm also doing community engagement coordination at National Queer Theater. So the kind of tied all in a big bow is that the skills you learn at the fellowship will lead you to continued work in the off-Broadway or just artistic administrative space. So yeah. Did I answer everything, Sequoia?
You did. Thank you. Um, so we're basically just going through these questions. Now we're fully on Q&A, and I think this is the most important time because we want to hear from the people who are joining us, and we want to make sure we're answering their questions. So the next question is, what's something about the fellowship that surprised you or made you feel grateful for applying? I actually am interested in hearing from Marty, who even though has a full-time job with us, Marty was also a fellow.
Yeah, thank you, Sequoia. I think that something that surprised me was just um, kind of like how I was actually just answering someone in the chat asked about getting to know the different communities that New York Theater Workshop is connected with. And I think that was something that really surprised me very quickly. There's so many great folks on the block here on East 4th Street. There's so many different communities of alums from our different programs that we've done in education and engagement. And I feel like I just really felt a sort of warm vibe of connectivity across people that interacted with me through my time at the workshop. I think there's something very special about the workshop that it's very downtown, it's very specific. We have a phrase in the office like, you might hate it. Like, are taking bold artistic choices with the work that we do. And I think that that surprised me as I got to know that. And I also was just surprised that everyone in the staff really like incorporates the fellows into the day-to-day work. Like, you take on a lot of responsibility and trust within the various departments you're a part of. And so in order to really put a lot of energy into those relationships I was just talking about, like, it takes a village, no East Village pun intended. And so you as a fellow really get to incorporate your interests into that work, and you get to really become part of the full team. So I think like broadly about the workshop that surprised me, and then also just like my own day to day. And that was one of the reasons why I wanted to stay on and keep working here, for the people, for the community, and then also for that ability to have that engagement with my work on the day to day, and getting that ability to do lots of different things. Yeah.
Thank you, Marty. I'm seeing a lot of questions about interviews, so I'm gonna like do this like three part. So Kim, if you could talk about your interview process, because I know that was a little bit longer, and then Julie, you talk about your interview process, and Martika, not to put you on the spot, but if you want to talk about like what that means from an admin perspective, in the sense of like what they can be looking out for when it comes to communication from you when it comes to the interview process, and hopefully that'll give people more clarity on how interviews work.
Yeah, so for the Artistic Workshops Fellowship, I applied as normal, as you would for any of the fellowships. And I did select a different fellowship as my second choice. So you should do that, like Sequoia said. And I was selected to do just a Zoom interview with the supervisor of the artistic department. And then following that interview, it's like if you move on to the next round, you will be sent a script to your email in a few days after your interview. So this happened to me. You are sent a script, typically a script of a new play. It's often a play that's not published yet because it's new work development. And then they send you a script report to fill out, which is a guided PDF. So it's not like you're just writing an essay about the play. It's like you're filling out, like you're answering in bullet points, like short form responses to the prompts and the questions they have about the play. And that typically follows the Liz Lerman critical response style, which you can Google. It's broken up into a bunch of different categories. But yeah, you're just answering some guided prompts about the play. And then after that, yeah, I was offered the position.
Yeah, just to speak to the education side, and I think maybe how the other departments run as well, it's a little bit more of a cut and dry, like job application style interview. So I believe I had one interview, and it was some of those more typical questions of like, why are you interested in this fellowship? What skills do you have? And I remember especially talking about like organizational systems and how you are prepared, showing that you're like prepared to work in a fast-paced environment and keep all of that under control. But it was more of a like typical streamlined process.
And so what the process looks like after you apply is I connect with all the supervisors in the departments and help them coordinate looking through applications. And then once they've looked through all the applications and we're ready to reach out to candidates for interviews, I'll reach out to you for interview availability. And I'll let you know who the supervisor is that you'll be interviewing with and a list of potential dates and times. They'll all be conducted over Zoom. And then you'll just respond and confirm what works best for you. And then you'll get a calendar invite from me. Um, and yeah, it's pretty much it after that.
So it's really important that you're checking your emails. Like it happened last year, someone, because these interviews are happening around the time if you're a senior, you're graduating college, and there's a lot happening. And they missed their interview because they got caught up in all of the senior graduation and family in town. And we were way past the deadline. So it's really the deadline to even do the interview. So it's really important that you're keeping track of, opening your emails, being in communication with Martika. So yeah, that's just really important.
Yeah, and I will try and follow up with people if I haven't heard back from you. But just know there are a lot of applicants that we have to schedule interviews with. So it could happen that I'm not able to follow up with you multiple times. So definitely just keep an eye on your inbox.
And as far as like extra materials that's needed, other than the script report that Kim mentioned, and that's for artistic workshop, the rest of the interview process for the other departments is just that one interview. There's no like next step that you would have to do. Um, for someone with a background outside of theater, how would you recommend approaching the application? I think that's a really good question. Um, think about one, talking about like why you want to make the pivot anyway. Two, oh, before I finish that, Kim is jumping off because it's opening night for one of our shows, and Kim's gonna go
Woohoo!
see it. My Joy is Heavy. If you're in New York, come see it. But shout out to Kim. Thank you, Kim.
Bye, everyone. Thank you. Good luck with your applications. Bye.
Yeah, think about your think about like one while you want to make that pivot from whatever to theater administration. I think about our former finance fellow who is currently our finance coordinator. He was like fresh out of school and was working at Starbucks as a barista and did that for many years. And he did mostly retail, but he knew he wanted to work in theater. And he was able to apply the work that he did in retail, whether it's like, working with cash, working on a register, interacting with people, doing financial reports. Like but it was very on like a small scale compared to the finance associate finance fellow. That's when we had a finance fellow at the time, budget cuts. But he was able to talk about like transitioning from retail into finance when it comes to theater. So one, talk about why you're even interested in making the pivot. Two, I'm sure there is a way, there's a correlation for those transferable skills. Okay, I think it's a good question. What do you, if anything, do you wish you knew before starting the fellowship? I think I would love to hear from everyone when it comes to that. Something you wish you knew before starting the fellowship.
A lot of it, you are truly working. It is a job. Like there's an educational component to it, and you have the ability to fail forward, and you have the ability to be respected in like your opinions and thoughts, and you show up like how you are. But um, the rigor that's required in terms of like the cadence of meetings and keeping up with like little details is extremely important and a bit jarring and hard to get used to. But once you do, you start to really fly. But if I wish I could go back and tell myself to take things a little more slowly at the beginning, as opposed to wanting to jump into every meeting I could, I think that's what I would say.
I'll jump in. Similar to Jerome, I feel like I would tell myself to really like maximize the experience of being a fellow within your cohort. I got really close to my fellow fellows, and it was a great experience. And I think I wish I had also slowed down and really used them as support throughout the whole experience too. Like they are there for you as your peers and friends to like debrief how things are going. Like, I think that that was definitely something that I wanted to maximize a little bit more. As a fellow, we have funding for you to like go get dinner together, and we like really treat the fellows as an affinity group within the office. And so I remember in my fellowship year, we ended up using a lot of our money like in the summer right before the end of our fellowship. Like we did a one last hurrah dinner. Like I would say before it gets to the end of your fellowship, like use that that opportunity to really hang out with your fellow fellows sooner and like form that bond. And then relatedly too, I've been seeing a lot of questions about like the network of fellows and like fellow alums within the network. Actually, this week we have an alumni like fellowship alumni mixer and reunion. And I'm very excited to see my fellow fellows from my year who are both going to be there. Like there really is such a broad network now after several years of doing this fellowship of people who are a resource to you. And so I feel like that's another thing too that I wished I had really leaned into as I started getting to know other alums of the program, getting to know them and actually take that time to ask them, hey, can we get coffee one day? Like, actually use that as a networking opportunity as well. So I think that, like, again, similar to what Jerome was saying, just like enjoy being a fellow and all the things that it offers you.
Yeah, this is all on a similar thread, but I think something in the middle of my fellowship that I've been learning in the moment is like I had an experience where in the fall, I felt like I was doing pretty well with the workflow, like there wasn't too much on my plate, and I think I kind of sat back a little bit and then saved a ton of the networking and professional development elements that the fellowship allows for this like latter half of the of my time as a fellow. And now I'm finding that like we're in the midst of a ton of programming, everything's sort of layered on top of each other. All the departments are busier than they were in the beginning of the year. And all the while, I'm trying to be like, hey, can we get that coffee or can we schedule this interview, whatever. And so I wish, although there's sort of a natural like learning curve or time to settle in that comes with, part of me wishes I had like gotten into my fellowship and then just been brave enough to start meeting with the department heads or start reaching out to the teaching artists and getting coffee with them instead of saving it for when we're like maximum busy. Yeah.
Great. I'm seeing some really great questions, and I just want to make sure we get to all of them. So, I see this question for accessibility reasons. If chosen to interview, might we be able to provide interview questions in advance? We don't provide the questions in advance, but we provide question topics. So, for example, you'll come in. So, Martika will send you an email when she confirms your interview, saying, "Hey, you'll be meeting with such and such." You'll have the names of the people you're meeting with, and you'll have like conversation starters. So it won't be the questions, but you'll know going in that we might ask you about why you're applying for New York Theater Workshop. We might ask you about, your interest in education and engagement. So they're broad level conversation starters as opposed to the specific questions because we want to treat this as a conversation. We don't want to be rigid and like we have to ask these questions at this exact time. However, from an equity standpoint, we do have like standard questions. We just don't share them, if that makes sense. Fellows are typically post grad. J That's just the way it works. However, we have had a fellow who was in school, but they were in school part-time. Again, knowing that the hours are typically 30 hours is really it has been challenging from my observation, for fellows to balance school full time, like undergrad full time, while doing the fellowship. Now, we do have some fellows. We have a current fellow who is in grad school right now, but her schedule is a lot more like flexible for her to work 30 hours a week while going to grad school. Um,
Sequoia, can I answer one of these
yes,
questions out
sure.
loud? I'm just going to read it for everyone understands it. The question was, would you need to be well versed with InDesign, Illustrator for the Marketing Fellowship, or a basic set of skills and OK Start? Are there any other programs you need to be aware of? I just want to say this in a general sense, actually. I went into the fellowship with a lot of specific, like Adobe skills, but at least for team marketing, I can only speak to. It is built around what you want to get out of the fellowship. So I specifically wanted to enhance my graphic design and editing skills. So that's what I was bringing to the table. But if you do not have that skill or you only know a specific other program, that I would not discourage you from applying and indicating that actually I want to get to know more about um, press or ticketing or front of office, front of house, whatever that may be. That's just one part of the fellowship, but there is a very talented person on the team marketing who could definitely help you in terms of if you are not aware of how to use InDesign or anything like that. And in terms of softwares, there's quite a few. Um, I wouldn't worry about that right now, honestly.
Thank you, Jerome. Someone asked about, if you're interested in all four, you can only apply to two. So only one application, only two choices. Um, From I think people who are asking about like the visas and like international, like you can please go to the FAQs. We have like language that is specifically from our internal operations department. And if that doesn't answer your question, reach back out to us via email. But it's pretty clear about we don't do any sponsorships, we don't sign off on anything. Um, so whatever you need in place to be employed by us, you will have to get that elsewhere. Um, You will get a recording of the webinar with the slides, not necessarily tonight, but probably tomorrow. Definitely tomorrow, not necessarily tonight. Um, Oh, does NYTW provide any space for the admin fellows to share their other artistic endeavors, work with each other and other staff? Oh, this is a great question. So we have an initiative called Staff Artistic Instigators, where it's it's many things. Some of the things that we've done in the past, we do readings of shows that we are considering. So last December, we did a reading of, well, I can't say the show because we haven't announced the show yet, but we did a reading of a show that we're going to do in our 26, 27 season. And the staff, like those who consider themselves actors or those who just wanted to have some fun during work hours, we put on a reading in front of the other staff members. Another staff artistic instigators consisted of an open mic or just an open sharing where Julie shared. I'll let Julie talk about what they shared, but that consisted of people doing monologues, that consisted of people sharing excerpts from plays that they've written, excerpts from novels they've written. Someone shared a scarf that they crocheted. And Julie also shared as well. So Julie, if you want to give us some insight on what you presented.
Yeah, I shared some artwork that I like some visual art that I had been working on, and it was one of my highlights of the year. It was the first time I'd ever like shared my drawings with anyone, and so it was a very supportive group. And also just cool that it was not all theater stuff. It was also like people's novels that they're working on and kind of anything people wanted to bring. So it was awesome.
I think this question here about the development fellow is really interesting. So think of the development fellow as having the opportunity, to Jerome's point, with marketing, to choose your own adventure. Because development is such a robust team, you have institutional giving, which is all about institutions or other organizations, bigger entities giving New York Theater Workshop money because we are a nonprofit. Individual giving, so think of that as like we have a repeat defender program, donors, trustees, individuals who are giving New York Theater Workshop money. And then also special events. So that's our gala, that's opening night, that's any kind of special like board trustee outing. And the development fellow has the access to, you know, see all three lanes. Also in Devo, they work with our board, so they get the opportunity to interact with our board. And if you are interested in connecting with someone from Devo, like again, email adminfellowship@nytw.org, and we have a list of Devo fellows who we can put you in contact with if you have specific questions about the Devo Fellowship. Um, Also, with that being said, check out our website to see where our fellows are. I am very proud to say that we do have a success rate when it comes to getting jobs, and not just at the workshop. People have gotten hired. We do a lot of times hire our fellows, but also, fellows are working like Jerome. National Queer Theater, but also was at another place before that as and became the director of marketing. We have people now working in the government, people now working at in Broadway theaters and commercial theater. So check out the website because it's really a great opportunity to see where our fellows end up. Um, I love this question. What is the confidence barrier challenge that you had to overcome when first starting your fellowship, and how did you do so? I would love to hear from all of any and everyone who wants to speak on that.
I don't know. I feel like this is really bringing up like when I look back at the early months of like the bouts of imposter syndrome, which I don't know is really the best way. Like why I was going through, I'm not ter like, it's kind of like, wow, I'm in this very prestigious spot and I don't know if I actually have the skills for this. But I think for me, the settling into the position was just getting to know the other staff members and like actually building community. I think this just goes back to what Marty was saying too. Like really relying on my fellowship cohort as both confidants and friends and co collaborators as well. Um, yeah, but I feel like that sort of confidence obstacle. I mean, I feel like it took a few months, but I also want to say, in my opinion, I feel like that's the case at all jobs. There's just going to be a moment where you're just like, I don't know what's going on here.
Yeah, I think one thing for me that I've already talked about a little bit, but just like being confident enough to feel like you're a full part of the company, I think was something I had to learn. Where even like they told us in the beginning that like if there's room available, you could maybe schedule a rehearsal in the upstairs rehearsal space. And I did not do it for a long time because I was like, that seems like it's not for me, or it seems like it's for the real staff members, and was sort of making like a built-in hierarchy. And then when I asked our office manager about it, she was like, "Oh yeah, not a bother at all. The room's free. Go ahead and have your rehearsal." And so just like knowing that you're a part of the company and you can ask for what you need and seek out what you need, um, that was something I really had to work on.
I'll say I loved how many different projects that I was working on. I loved working on, Julie's already talked about our youth ensemble and our intergenerational playwriting program, Mind the Gap. And I feel like I was, I learned very quickly, like, there are just so many moving parts all the time. And so, really, just like communicating and self-advocating, being like, hey, like, I need support with this, or I want to clarify this question. I think that's even been something following my fellowship that I've continued to learn is just like I'm gonna like not be afraid to ask this question just to clarify, just because I think everyone, as we've said, has so many different things on their plate that we really want to support each other and like people are there to support you. So don't be afraid or hesitate when you're asking a question. I think especially you can start to create a sort of imposter syndrome about like, oh, well, I'm a fellow, like maybe, and you can just kind of very easily get in your head. But I would say like definitely working past that and just being like, okay, I recognize that we're all in this together. I just want to clarify this question or juggle these things. I think that that's definitely something that I learned and worked through as a fellow.
Um, just want to acknowledge that in the past, the fellows have received a $500 monthly stipend, and that was also when the fellows' hourly rate was 16.50. There is no longer a stipend. The hourly rate is now $20 an hour. How many applications do we typically receive and how many fellows are accepted? It ranges honestly every year. Some years there's 400 applications, some years there's 600. Um, this year is tracking very slowly. So I guess y'all wanted to come to the session before you put in your application, and that's fine. Because the applications are light. But we choose four. So yeah. If you have a mix of theater and film background, are there specific crossover elements or roles, screenwriting, casting, production, or pre-production experience that are attractive for a candidate? I think, again, telling us who you are and why you're interested, because like you're applying for a fellowship. You're applying for the opportunity to come into an institution, learn and grow, and then go off and pursue your career. We're not expecting you to have all the ins and outs. So if your background is essentially in screenwriting, or film, and it's a mix, talk about either like why you're interested in spending these months focused specifically on theater. Talk about why you're interested in, you know, pivoting completely from film to theater. Like just t it's all about the storytelling. Tell us what you want out of this. And then like the skills that you will bring to theater, what you can learn and grow from this fellowship. And then it's up to the supervisor to say, oh, I think this person would be a great fit. It truly is about fit. It's about like how you yourself, you as an artist, you as a person, administrator, fit into what that department is looking for at the time. Like, I don't want people to get caught up in like trying to like fit into a mode. There is no mode. You are the person, you are the storyteller, you are the person who like be you and tell us why you. I hope that makes sense, but it's all about like being you and trusting that if it's for you, it'll happen. No, there's one for each department. There's only four departments, so one fellow per department. So we choose four fellows. General age of the cohort, um, again,
Uh,
it changes.
yeah,
Go
I
ahead,
was about
Jerome.
to answer this one. I was like, I entered the fellowship at 28. So I feel like it could be, yeah, so I'm just saying what you're gonna say, Sequoia, but I'm just giving the like, it's okay, please apply.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I think that's 100% fair. And like again, there have been fellows who have been since I've been here, the oldest fellow was like 36 when they started. It was an artistic fellow years ago. And then we had a fellow one year who wasn't even drinking age. And we were like, we've never had this before. So like opening nights is typically an open bar. And we were like, don't drink. Like I don't know if I should have said that, but yeah, I'm just saying like they were under 21, so it's a broad range. But again, tell us why you're making this career change. You obviously, if you are a decade post undergrad, you've clearly done some things between graduating and now. And also to be clear, this isn't a program specifically for, people who are fresh out of university. But like again, tell us the story. Why do you want to do this fellowship? Why now? Why in your 30s or 40s are you like, I want to do this fellowship. I want to make this change. It's all about the storytelling because your personal statement, which is where you tell your story, that's what's going to capture us. That's what's going to make us say, hey, I want to interview this person. I want to learn more about them. So, storytelling.
Sequoia, could I add on that really quickly? I just wanted to say that also in our cohort, the current development associate or development fellow is also like older, just has been out of college for a while and is now, as Sequoia had mentioned, in her grad program. And I noticed as like observing her as a younger fellow, she came in kind of ready to know exactly, like she really had this clear vision of what she wanted out of the fellowship. And then she jumped right into her own research projects and just like integrated into the development department in such an interesting way that I think really proved why she was like right for the fellowship at that time. Because she had probably, I don't know what Chandler wrote on her application, but she had probably been like, I'm ready to do this because I want to work on X, Y, and Z in your development department. And then that really came to fruition. So we were all sort of at different levels of what we needed to get out of things.
Thank you, Julie, for that context. And to even add further, so for the context of that, that particular Devo fellow in their interview was like, I know I want to be an executive director of a theater and I want to do it through the route of development. And they knew exactly what they wanted coming into the fellowship. They knew why they were applying, and that's great, but if that's not you, that's also okay. If you're like, I'm 22. I'm figuring out I kind of want to be in development, but I also like marketing. That's what this is for. Um, to like talk about my department a little bit. A lot of our former education and engagement fellows, they've done education and engagement, and then they went into something else. Like one fellow went into casting. She's a full-time casting director. Another fellow is working in community engagement. Another fellow is an executive assistant at Playwrights Horizon. Like our fellows are like, we do education and engagement, but then the doors open to other things. Marty is the only one who's remained in the education engagement world, thankfully. And even then, because Marty's about to do some really cool artistic stuff. Anyways, um, more questions. Any questions? Future plans after the fellowship. I think that's for you, Julie.
Yeah, that applies to me. I'm figuring it out. I've been debating a lot, kind of to the point Sequoia was just making. In education, there's a world of like continuing down the admin path, and I feel passionate about building educational programs for youth in New York City. And then there's another world that's much more like hands-on teaching and things like that. And so part of me, as I'm finishing my fellowship, I'm applying to some things that are like directing focused or teaching focused, where I would specifically be just a freelance teacher, like pulling money together from every way I can, or alternative options of like kind of grounding more long term in a theater company where I can do similar admin work. So I don't know yet, but I will keep you posted once I figure that out.
What were you drawn to NYTW, and what have you found to be the most rewarding about your specific department? Well, and I would love to hear from Jerome and Marty on that as well.
I'm happy to jump in. There are a couple questions about this in the chat too that I answered about kind of like the general environment and vibe of New York Theater Workshop. Um, One of the things that I think when I was on the hunt for an opportunity like this, comparing New York Theater Workshop to other theaters, I won't say anything about any other theater because I don't work there, but I will say something that I thought was really unique and stood out was the like way in which the workshop talks about their broader interests as a theater and a workshop. So this like support of artists. And then I think for me, especially being interested in arts education and theater education and community engagement, like how artists also includes people who are not necessarily like your actors, your playwrights, the people that are doing a workshop or a main stage production here, but also just artists of all ages, artists of all backgrounds. So I loved the idea that a teenager or an elder is celebrated as an artist just the same way. So I think that drew me specifically to the workshop and specifically to the work of the education and engagement department here. And then I'll say broadly too, I think the one of the things that I put in the chat for a couple people were the core values. I think that's something that I highly recommend that you read as you're applying. Be thinking about like what is the general ethos of the organization that I'm applying to? What are the things that they live by? And I think that the core values that we have listed on our website is something that also stood out to me as something unique that I wasn't finding other places.
Yeah, I agree with everything Marty said and would add that I think I was drawn to the workshop for the fact that I feel like in my heart of hearts, theater in so many ways can operate like a community center or a place where like people can gather and share ideas and just be in conversation about hard topics or easy topics, joy, the whole thing. And I feel like the workshop does follow that sense of always leaning towards gathering people and creating this um, just creating like resources and avenues for folks to conversate, but also to premiere new work. I just feel like that's what theater is about. It's not gatekeeping, and I feel like the workshop really is good at like really being open, having an open door policy. So that that drew me to it. And then I think the second part of the question was what drew me to my department or what I liked about the department. Team marketing, it works fast. It's a lot going on all the time. There's a lot of overlap all the time. There's a lot of meetings. You're meeting with like the artists, you're meeting with press team. You're just like you're kind of always operating in a roadway and getting information to and from people. And what kind of kept me going after that to highlight Sequoia's sort of like success about this all. When I ended the fellowship, I was hired to be the marketing lead. You might as well say the head of marketing for this festival, and it was for 8 shows, and I had 3 months to do it. And just from being in team marketing, knowing how like a marketing department is supposed to work, how things are supposed to overlap, how we are supposed to communicate with Devo, how we're supposed to communicate with production, was able to be quite successful in that role. So I just feel like that team marketing in itself drew me for the fact that it's so intersectional, and it also gave me the tools to be quite successful in my post fellowship time.
Great. How much should we focus on identity background in the application? As people who have done applications and was accepted into the fellowship, could you speak on some of the things that you said in your personal statement?
I'm gonna have to default to y'all because that was so many years ago. Don't ask me.
No, I was doing the same thing. I was like, that was only a year and a half, 2 years ago. And I'm like, what did I even write?
Mhm. Yeah, I feel like I've forgotten it too, but I was gonna say, I think for me, I was working, shout out to Jerome, I was working at National Queer Theater where Jerome now is before applying. So I was
I
coming
forgot that.
from,
Yes,
I
yes.
know, it's great to like meet you. We've emailed. But I was first like coming from a world of queer education. So a lot of what I wrote about and in terms of identity was focusing on being a trans and non-binary teacher and coming from having like spent the last years of my teaching experience just working with queer and trans youth. And then I also want to like, as Sequoia talked about in the beginning of this call, I was a white person applying to this job. And so being careful to like acknowledge who you are, not sort of like need to lie about that, or I don't know why you'd lie about that. That would be a big flag. But just like being honest about who you are, honest about what privileges you have and what privileges you might not have, and then being able to sort of speak to like how you're going to show up in this space as a white person or how you're going to show up in this space as a queer person and whatever different ways that might intersect. So I wouldn't say my whole thing was about identity, but I did have a background in queer teaching, which was what I like sort of grounded my writing on. I'm not sure if that helps that much, but yeah.
No, I think that's great, Julie. Thank you. I'll also say, like, storytelling is just so important in your personal statement. Like there's no like we can say, what works, what doesn't work, but it's truly you telling a story because that is what's going to get you to the interview. That's what's going to make me or any supervisor. And this is beyond New York Theater Workshop. This is just life skills and entering the job force. Because it might not be a personal statement, but it'll be a cover letter of you writing a story about why you are the best person for this job. And when I say best person, that doesn't necessarily mean most skilled person, but the best person to come into an institution in your whatever, as like for me, like as a young black girl from if I'm putting myself in my 20s when I would have done something like this or whatever, like as a young black girl from Alabama who never lived in New York before but and didn't have much exposure to theater but loved theater and wanted to, have the opportunity to just immerse myself into something that I'm truly passionate about to get on the ground training. Like telling that's my story So what is your story? Maybe your story is you're born and raised in New York. You've been around theater. You've seen 100 Broadway shows, but like you can't do anything else. Like there's nothing else in this world that you want to do. And you coming to New York Theater Workshop is your dream because you remember seeing Hadestown when you were 12 years old. Like I don't know, but tell the story. And I hope this is making sense. And I would love to hear from Martika too, who has some experience in the job force and cover letters and personal statement writing. But tell the story. Tell the story.
Yeah, I think I would agree. It's definitely about sharing your story, offering your unique perspective, which is specific to your lived experience, um, and really being able to explain what it is that you want. And even if you're in a place of discovery in your life where you're not exactly sure where you're trying to go with your career, being open and forthright about the fact that I have curiosity and I want to explore these different avenues in theater can be very helpful. And so you know, New York Theater Workshop definitely wants to bring people in who have a history with the theater, but also folks who are still just testing out the waters and trying to figure out um, what aspects of theater, especially in administration and yeah, what aspects of theater they're most interested in.
Oh, my transition from Alabama, I moved here when I was graduated university. And like I moved here for acting, but I ended up doing a apprenticeship, which is basically kind of like a fellowship at New York City Children's Theater. I started off in like the children's theater game. And that was when we were paid through a Metro card. So, oh, we have come a long way in the fellowship and internship world. But anyways, yeah, it's just tell your story, and trust that what's meant to be will be. We have a few more minutes left if anyone has any questions, but you can email adminfellowship@nytw.org, and that email is managed by Martika. And any questions that you may have that maybe you may watch this again and you're like, oh, I have another question. You can email adminfellowship@nytw.org and we'll be sure to answer it. But we truly thank you all for, spending your evening with us, asking us questions. And oh, there's one more. Is there acceptance of all art? I'm very interested in the drag as well as aerial arts community, but that can overlap in more adult areas and topics, and that's why I want to connect my skills and passions to in my personal statement. I mean, again, whatever your interests and passions are, that's fine, but like you connecting it to this fellowship. So, like, how does that align with your interest in working in marketing or development or education and engagement? And then when I say that in the admin sense, like this isn't an artistic fellowship. You wouldn't necessarily be practicing those things. You would be at a desk. In education and engagement, you might occasionally be on your feet teaching, but that's teaching from our curriculum, not necessarily your own thing. But yeah, we accept it all. We had one former fellow, the fellow who I said was under 21. They were a working drag artist, and they actually hosted one of our donor nights as their drag self. I forgot their drag name, but yeah. Does the fellowship accept people who are looking for career changes, for example, shifting from teaching full time to teaching artistically with NYTW? Yeah, like again, if you want to apply, if you teach full time, you're like, I want to be a teaching artist and I'm applying for education and engagement, talk about that in your personal statement. There is no like yes or no. It's as long as you can meet the diversity like lens in the sense of you tell us why this fellowship is good for you and like you're underrepresented in the administration field, like, yeah, let us know. It's all about you telling us your personal story and how it aligns to you.
Sequoia, quickly to respond to Rebecca's question about departments that make sense for being a PA or stage manager. I think from my view, artistic or education would be the best ones, just because I think you could make a case for any of them to be useful. But in artistic, you're almost like stage managing, though it's bordering on like producing, but you're printing scripts and being in rehearsals through all of their Mondays at 3 readings. So you're going to get that like in the room experience. And from the education side, you're acting as like a stage manager or assistant on the Youth Artistic Instigators production, which is what the youth ensemble works towards until from like October up until April. So right now we're in full production mode, blocking stuff and I'm taking notes on that and creating like reports and things like that. So if I think that both of those give some tangible stage management based experiences.
I agree with that. Marketing, we're mostly dealing with ticketing.
Awesome. All right. I'm gonna throw it to Martika for last words. And that's also the person you'll be communicating with when questions arise and as your applications come in and things like that.
All right. Thank you again, everyone, for joining us for this webinar. Again, this will be available on the New York Theater Workshop Admin Fellowship page, as well as the New York Theater Workshop YouTube channel. Don't expect it tonight, likely tomorrow. And if you have any additional questions, you can also send an email to the New York Theater Workshop Admin Fellowship email. Um, and I will put that in the chat. Um, but yeah, be on the lookout for emails from me as I start scheduling your interviews after applications close on the 27th. And that, that's everything from me.
Awesome. Thank you all so much. Have a great rest of your night, and we'll see your application.